We move on now to a forecast for this year, as 2023 has been dubbed a year for growth and recovery in the South African SME sector. Now, this forecast comes as small businesses have been recovering from the effects of COVID-19, along with subdued economic activity and growth in a precarious economic climate. The sector has also been branded as filled with opportunities to propel local economic growth and help alleviate unemployment in the country. For more on what lies ahead for the SME space in South Africa, we speak to the Chief Risk Officer for SME Funding Provider at Lulalend, Garth Rossiter. Garth, thank you so much for your time. In the previous conversation, we spoke of the effects of load shedding. So where are the green shoots expected to come from in the SME sector in this current climate?
That's what we're saying. Thanks, it's difficult to find those green shoots. As the previous things have said, it's a harsh environment for these SMEs. They've come out of that COVID period. A lot of them shut down. A lot of these small businesses shut down or had to curtail operations quite significantly. And now they're obviously facing load shedding, which really restricts their ability. So I think what we're trying to see is that we'll say that the SMEs in South Africa are really resilient. Growth is always a concern, but we do have a fairly cautiously positive outlook in terms of how industries are able to pivot. And where we're seeing these businesses focus is largely in the renewable sector, and that's in answer to the problems at Eskom. So we're seeing a lot of growth in that sort of area. In transport and logistics, we see strong growth as supply chains start to improve post-COVID. And then also in IT, that's where a big portion of the businesses are investing at the moment.
Speaking of IT, Garth, how important has it become really to digitize in the SME industry, especially because the COVID period taught many of us in South Africa and businesses that that's the way to go?
Yeah, no, 100%. So a lot of businesses have gone digital route, a lot have gone online. So e-commerce is a very strongly growing segment in our portfolio. And a lot of the businesses we find sit in that sort of space. The issue they have, obviously, is load shedding. So on two fronts, digitization is important from a payments point of view. That's happening quite significantly as people move away from cash. But at the same time, from a marketing perspective, it becomes a lot cheaper to access your market through digital means as well. So that works, but obviously when you don't have power, a lot of these businesses struggle. And so that's what we've been saying for a couple of years now, is that government's focus really needs to be on, as everyone in South Africa, I think, has been saying, that government's focus needs to be on fixing Eskom and getting power and just providing basic infrastructure for these businesses to operate.
Outside of the load shedding, where government has a role to play to create a conducive environment, what more is needed in this landscape so that we do get to a point in South Africa where the SME sector is excelling in the manner at which the state is proposing, where we are seeing job creation at an even accelerated rate?
Yeah, to be frank, it's a good question. What we've always said is that the government needs to play as little role as possible. What they do need to do is provide that infrastructure. So where we talk about ports, we talk about roads, we talk about electricity. If those are provided to small businesses are resilient enough to create the opportunities and build their businesses themselves. So it's the access to funding as well. I know government does look to provide opportunities to small businesses in terms of grant funding. But then obviously alternative lenders will step into that space, such as Lulalend, where we can provide fast funding to these businesses, because that's what they really need. It's the speed and pace. Consumers need the speed and pace. In this world of sort of instant gratification where people want things very quickly, companies like ours provide that funding, and that needs to be fast. You can't wait months and months for funding to come through.
Is funding still a big challenge in South Africa, especially when we look at the likes and elements of angel funders or banks that are creating a system that is more easy to navigate for the SME sector?
Yeah, I mean, funding is one of the biggest things that always comes up in small businesses as their reason for failure, to be honest. So funding is critical. And that's where alternative lenders have filled the space. Banks are great. They're great for large transactions, but they're not known for their speed. So that's where alternative lenders fill that sort of space. And then government, I suppose, comes in terms of grant funding. They do that through various means. And I think businesses need to look out for those opportunities as well, where they can be supported by government. But it's the speed of the funding that businesses need, and that's where these alternative lenders such as us are filling that space.
Thank you so much for your insights, Garth Rossiter from Lulalend, talking to us about that optimistic 2023 outlook for the SME sector.